Yeah, I have a question, taking for granted for the sake of argument that these markets are doing very, very well. Just grant that. You said that people are now starting to realize that they should turn to these polls, to these markets instead of the New York Times, which is interesting because the people that are driving the markets are reading the New York Times, yes. Right? So that's interesting. And it raises the question whether you really shouldn't be telling people too much about these markets. Because and there seems like there's a well-defined set of analytical questions that could be raised here. What if people start factoring the markets into their inputs? Clearly, if that goes up too high, the market's destroyed, right? If people say, okay, you know what, I was going to read the New York Times, but now my best source of information is the prediction market. Now, if too many people do that, it's a disaster. It falls apart. So it seems like some of this could be done empirically, some of it could be done analytically. Does anybody know of any work along those lines?
So that it just becomes entirely reflexive. Yeah.
Right.
No. Why not bubbles? Okay, that's interesting because you talk about stock markets and immediately the word bubble comes up and these people are crazy and we're happy when it falls on their heads. Why do bubbles happen on the stock market? It's not only that people follow each other. It's also because there's a terrible asymmetry in the structure of what you trade on the stock market. When you take a company stock, it can be worth zero, so it's bounded at the lower limit, but it's unbounded at the higher limit. And for example, the stock of Google can go, stratospherically high. There's no limit to how much Google is going to be worth, right? There is a limit at zero, so there's a bound at one side, there's no bound on the other side. What does that mean? It means that if you want to go against Google, if you think Google is not worth that much, you're taking unbounded risk that the stock could go incredibly high and you're going to lose all your money before you're proved right. Because there's not even proof of being right or wrong on the stock market either, because the value of the Google stock is supposed to be some kind of weird computation of how much revenue Google is going to make over the next 20 years, okay, which is something nobody can compute, okay. So it's not tied to any kind of reality, but a prediction market stock is bounded exactly the same way on either side, so there's no asymmetry there. There's no more risk betting down than there is betting up, okay. On the stock market, there's incredible risk betting down and bounded risk betting up. So everybody bets up because that's easier to do. It's not as risky. Okay, that's why you get bubbles. I mean, that's one reason bubbles are really horrible in the stock market, and they don't happen as much in prediction markets because eventually the reality sets in. A real measured outcome is going to be deciding this thing, and there's no more risk either way.